Back in session. That's okay. Let's reconvene our Compensation Human Resources Committee. Chair Phillips.
This is going to be an informational session. Many months ago, we talked a bit about benefits and also about rate of return. We really won't get to decision making until April, but this will be an ongoing educational about the Total Rewards Program, and Vice President of Human Resources for the system, Betsy Rodriguez, is going to keep us thinking about this until we come back in April.
Thank you. So as you all recall, there's a Total Rewards Task Force that's working on the benefits issues in general. And so today, kind of unlike what I've done in the past, I'm not going to try to present the issues in detail or certainly not propose any solutions. Instead, I just want to give you a brief update, and we're going to be very excited to share the findings and recommendations of the task force with you in April. So on the first slide, let me just, or the next slide I should say, thank you. Total Rewards is the university's branding of our compensation and benefits. And these are the tools that we use to recruit, retain, and reward our talented faculty and staff. And the tools include pay and the traditional benefits such as medical and retirement, but it also includes all those other things, some with financial value and some without, that employees perceive to be of value. We began this branding in 2011. We've been using this strategy so that faculty and staff can instantly recognize when we're providing information or programs or services that relate to their total rewards. It also helps us think broadly about what it takes to get high-quality faculty and staff here and what it takes to keep them. Of course, one of our ongoing greatest challenges is how to make sure that employees are getting the information that they need and they're understanding and valuing those rewards. On the next slide, I want to just briefly show you our compensation philosophy. I have shown this to you before. This was developed a couple of years ago by the Human Resources Council and was vetted with campus leadership and adopted. This philosophy is about managing compensation so that it's supportive of the university's mission and strategy, and also so that it has internal and external consistency and fairness, that it's based on merit or performance, and is a single system across all of the campuses and yet flexible enough that they can use it to meet their needs. I'm going to show you a view of the university's competitive position relative to pay, but let me make a few remarks first before we get to that next slide. So we have over 19,000 benefit-eligible faculty and staff, and they're in all kinds of roles across the campus. I'm going to show you a really high-level view, which does not even begin to speak to the diversity of the kinds of roles that we have, but I'm going to use that just to give you a kind of relative idea of where we sit compared to our peers. So the good news is that we're going to be getting better and better data in this regard, and that the campuses have, as part of their strategic plans, some very good plans for how they're going to address compensation. So let's begin with faculty on the next slide. This is a high-level overview of our faculty pay situation relative to peers. You can see that we've broken it out by campus, and we've also broken it out by the three ranks of faculty, which is assistant, associate, and full professor. I want to make sure you understand we're looking at pay across disciplines. And as you can imagine, it varies dramatically from, say, math to English to physics, etc. So we're looking at this just in the aggregate. I do know that the campuses have spent quite a bit of time looking at it by discipline, and you see the same trends that you see here relative to peers. Now remember, this doesn't mean that all faculty are paid below their peers. We in fact have some faculty that have very competitive pay. And of course, in any organization that does pay based on merit, you wouldn't assume that everyone even should be at market. But this just gives the overall picture that we do have some concerns relative to our peers.
Who are the peers? Average or median?
I'm sorry?
Is this average or median?
It's an average.
Who are the peers? Is that SEC or?
The peers differ for each campus. For MU, it's the AAU publics, so the 32 or 34 public AAU institutions. For the two urban campuses, it tends to be urban universities. And for Rolla, it's their peers based on the kind of institution that they are.
Betsy, what's the current ranking? Where do we stand, the MU campus in relation to AAU? Some years we've been 33 out of 34. Some years we've been 34. Have we moved up at all?
No, no. Overall, we're at the bottom. I think it may vary a little bit by rank. And Ken, is it maybe one up if you're at associate level? But I think it's at the bottom overall. Does that sound right, Ken? Yes. Yeah. But the big point is we have not moved. So on the next slide, I want to talk briefly about staff. We have a similar picture with staff, but we did have a significant problem in trying to get our arms around the data. And as I've mentioned to you before, we have a staff pay structure that was very out of date. One of the examples that I've used is that we have 8,000 staff in 4,000 titles. That made it very hard to go out to the market. But 3 years ago, we embarked on a staff compensation project. We're about to complete that. And we do have a completely new and market-driven system. It's got consistency and equity, and I'm proud to say that we are now down to 750 titles, which makes it very easy now for us to go out to the market, and we're starting to be able to make a lot of comparisons that we couldn't make before. We're also getting many other wins from this project. We've got a significant reduction in HR transactions. We can better set compensation for new hires. And importantly, when it comes time to do annual increases, it's much easier for managers to understand where their staff sit relative to their peers and to market. So on the next slide, I'm showing you a little different picture than what I showed you for faculty. Here you see the number of staff on each campus, their average pay, which again, it just varies widely, so I'm not sure that average is all that helpful. But it does give you a sense of the overall payroll, which is about $400 million for this particular project. Now, you might be looking at the hospital numbers and wonder why there's only 260. There are actually 4,500 staff at the hospital, but we excluded anyone who has direct patient care. They're actually in a completely different compensation structure that was built a few years ago by the hospital. So that's why you see the low numbers there for staff, for the hospital. It's the last line of the chart that I want to highlight for you. So for faculty, I showed you the average salary and how we compared to the peers. What I'm showing you here is the money it would cost to bring staff to the minimum of the pay range. Not to the middle of the pay range, to the minimum. So when we did this project, we found that a number of staff fell out below the minimum of the new ranges that we set. And I want to point out, we did not set our ranges at the 50th percentile of the market. We set them at the 40th percentile. Frankly, we couldn't afford to set them at the 50th percentile. So these are very reasonable ranges, and we still have a number of staff that have fallen below those ranges. The campuses are making some strategic investments to move these people into the bottom of the range. But what that means is we have a large number of staff grouped at the bottom quartile of those ranges and not close to the market, which would be the middle of that range. So we have quite a bit of work to do, and I think the takeaway from this is that our staff are in a similar position to faculty and that they are overall below market.
Betsy, is the market for the staff, is it this, for example, we're not looking at a comparison of AAU schools?
Correct.
We're
No.
looking at local markets, right?
Yeah, we spent quite a bit of time identifying markets based on the kinds of staff positions. So the lowest level staff positions would actually be a local or regional market, and then our highest staff positions would be a national market. But we did very deliberate choices there.
See,
Yes.
for the hospital, what's left? Administrators, clerical help, janitors?
Any position that's shared with the campuses, so it's administrative help, facilities kinds of folks, custodians, some of our other union titles that are electricians, things like that.
What's left, what's not here is doctors, nurses, and anyone else, professional or not, who handle patients?
Right, nurse techs, they have a lot of technical positions at the hospital. They're running the various machinery and things like that. So it's by far the majority of their staff are considered patient-focused and therefore in a different compensation structure.
The number of that would be 3,000 or 4,000 people or something like that?
There's 4,500, so there's about 4,200 that are not included here. Mm-hmm.
So it would seem for most of the facilities that it would be less than 1%, sometimes 0.5% to bring them to the 40% market.
Correct.
Is it anticipated that the campuses will be doing it? Are you overseeing that, or is it left to each campus decision?
It was left to each campus, but the chancellors felt very strongly about it, and now that the data are finalized, in the beginning the numbers looked a lot larger, but as we've gone through the detail of the projects, the chancellors are pretty committed to doing this. So each of them have plans to make this happen by April 1 of this year. And I want to correct one thing you said. It's not to bring them to the 40th percentile of the market, it's to bring them to the minimum of the market. The 40th percentile is considered the middle of our range, and we have very few staff that are that far along the range. Okay, I'll move on. On the next slide, I'm showing you a picture here of our overall spend on people. We spend $1.7 billion on people. This includes all of our benefit eligible as well as our part-time staff and faculty, and we have almost as many part-time folks, maybe more, than we do full-time folks. So this is our overall spend. What I really want to do is show you more about the benefit spend here. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to take that slice from the previous slide and give you some detail around this, and we've looked at this briefly before. Obviously, we spend most of our benefit funds on medical and retirement. That other piece that's in red, it's maybe the color's a little bit hard to tell, but it's up there at the top. That 10% includes a whole lot of things, FICA, tuition assistance, service awards, wellness. We have a whole lot of activities around total rewards that don't have a huge dollar amount, so we've lumped all those into other. And the only other thing I wanted to point out here is the retiree piece, which is at the bottom. It's yellow on my chart, but it looks a little orange up there. That actually represents the annual spend for the subsidy for retiree medical. That does not represent our actual unfunded liability that we have for retiree health insurance. We talked a little bit about that in May. We'll be talking about that a lot more in April. So just wanted to point out that's just the annual spend. So the question is, how has this amount changed over time? And on the next slide, you see a history of the benefits rate, and this is shown as a percent of payroll. That's how we calculate our benefit rate. We don't try to calculate the cost of each employee based on the choices that they may make, whether they have family coverage or single coverage. We average it across employees and come up with a percent. Our current percent is 27.5% of salary. And so you see here the history of how that's gone over time and where we anticipate it to go. And obviously from this slide, the takeaway is that it has grown substantially. It will continue to grow substantially unless we do something about it.
Betsy, and again, these bars aren't probably designed to be perfect proportion, but if you look at the next 4 years, it looks to me like the biggest increase will be in medical.
Absolutely.
And retirement looks fairly stable. Is that right?
Yes, it does. What's important is the retirement piece has grown substantially over time, but it does look like it could level off. But that's all subject, on the defined benefit side, it's all subject to what happens on our investment returns. So we're making the assumption here that we will meet that 8% return. That could certainly change. But yes, we absolutely anticipate huge increases on medical. Okay, on the next slide, I'm not going to spend much time on this. I just wanted to show you the numbers of employees that we have in each of the breakout areas here. And here you do see the healthcare number at 4,500. I also wanted to point out on this slide that we cover over 20,000 dependents. So we actually cover over 40,000, almost 40,000 lives on our medical plan. What's not on this slide are retirees, and we have about 8,000 retirees, and a little over about 64% of them also are in a medical plan. On the next slide, I wanted to show this to you because one of the most important questions on a medical plan like ours, because we're self-funded, is did we set the premiums appropriately? Obviously, we want to collect enough money to cover the claims and the administration, but not so much that we've over-collected. And so here this shows, as we have in the last few years, that we are pretty close to 100%, which would be the target here. Just as a reminder, the university is paying 75% of the medical premium, and the employee is paying the rest of it. If there's no questions, I'll move on to the next.
Retirees?
Retirees, it's less. It averages about 50%. It depends on their age and years of service at the time they retire, but it averages about 50%.
Either way, post 65 or pre-65?
Correct. If they're a retiree, they go on the retiree subsidy. Mm-hmm. On the next slide, I just want to touch on this briefly because we're going to spend a great deal of time on this in April. We've been trying to encourage employees to move into the high deductible plan, which is called My Options. It's the smaller bars there on your left. We continue each time during open enrollment in November to educate and try to encourage people to get into this plan. We also have been incentivizing by slowly pulling apart those premiums. Yes, Amy?
Why are we trying to get them into the high deductible plan?
We're going to talk more about this in April, but we believe that's a way to try to control costs both on the employee side and on the employer side. Most employers don't offer anything but a high deductible. We're very unusual that we offer both. Not in higher ed. It's still pretty common in higher ed to offer a preferred provider plan, but we would really like to try to move into high deductible. So we've been pulling apart those premiums, so there's a bigger and bigger difference in the premiums each year. We've also been putting university subsidy or contribution into the health savings account, which is another incentive to get employees into that plan. The interesting thing is new hires almost always take the high deductible plan. And I think it's because that's what they're used to from other employers. So we had some movement this year, but not a lot. So on the next slide, the next question that we should be asking about our plan is how do our overall claims and administration costs compare to others? And in fact, we did a study of this recently, and the study shows that our overall spend, which is $10,000 per employee, is actually below the study average, and it is significantly below the government and public sector comparison. So the comparison on the left is a database that the consultants manage that's a mix of all kinds of employers. The middle bar there is actually just government and private sector. So on the next slide, the next question is, well, if we have an overall lower spend, is that because we don't have a high-value plan? And the answer is no. We actually have a very high-valued plan. And what we're showing you here is that our value is actually higher than the database. It's about 4% higher in our high-deductible plan, which is that left red bar, and about 11% higher in our PPO. So we're getting a lot of value out of our plan for less money than other people are spending. That doesn't change the cost trend that I showed you earlier, that it's still going to continue to increase.
Betsy, is the reason our spend is lower is because of our demographics, or are we doing?
No, they normalize for that. So
we're doing things that are succeeding.
Yes, and there's a lot of things that were put in place before I got here, and many things that Kelly Stuck and her team have done since then. We have a really high usage of generic drugs. I want to say 95% or something. Does that sound right, Kelly?
That's network. Generic is
Yeah.
for about 70%.
Yeah, so we have a high number of people that use generic drugs, a high number of people that go in network, and those things all help control costs. So we've had very good luck. We're just kind of out of options. Okay, the next slide I was not going to cover unless you have questions. This is a slide you've seen before, and it's on the Affordable Care Act and just shows by year the things that we have to do to be in compliance. On the next slide, this is the same slide you've seen before as well. This just shows you the two retirement plans that we now have, the one on the left being our new retirement plan. And on the next slide, I just...
To go
yes.
back to that
Sure.
Affordable Care Act,
Okay.
How much extra is that going to cost us, or is it going to cost us any extra?
It will cost us. The first cost item for us will be covering anybody who's part-time who reaches the 30 hours and would have to be offered coverage. We don't think that's a lot of people, but we won't know that until the first year is over. We think it's probably around 500 people. The second big cost is going to hit us in 2018. You see at the bottom there I wrote to be determined. This is the excise or Cadillac tax that people talk about, and if our plan reaches certain levels, which we certainly will reach at our current rate, we will have to pay a tax on the additional amount of that premium. And we're still calculating that, but it'll be in the millions of dollars if we hit that excise tax.
How do we avoid that?
We're going to talk to you about that in April. We have some ideas, none of which are necessarily fun, but we think we have some ideas. And we're in the same boat as everybody else. There's hardly a plan in the country that won't hit that excise tax.
Right.
In fact, the plans that are out there on the federal market right now will hit the excise tax. So I will skip the next slide if that's okay.
Don't skip it. Go back to it. I
go
just
back,
want to
okay.
refresh us all, and
Uh-huh.
and maybe nobody else needs to be refreshed other than me. But so the one on the right, that's for
That's the current plan that we've had for 50 years.
For existing employees?
Correct. Uh-huh.
And then for new employees that came in after a certain date, and I've forgotten what
It
the
was
date
last
is.
October 2011.
And,
2012.
and for new employees, do they have the option of defined
No.
benefit, defined contribution, or it's
They-
all defined contribution?
It's both, but they don't have a choice of it. They go
Okay.
into this new kind of mixed plan.
Hybrid.
So they have half DB and half DC.
Got it.
Okay, on the next slide, I wanted to tell you that in just a year and a half, we have over 2,600 people already in this plan. The thing I really wanted to point out to you is the plan design calls for a voluntary contribution on the employee's part into the defined contribution. They don't have to contribute into the defined contribution, but we default them in at 3%, and 96% of them stay at the opt-in. Part of it is they maybe just don't pay attention, but we don't care. It's still a good result, and that means we have more people saving additional money for retirement. So we're very happy about that. We think that's a really good outcome. And as you all know, that was important to you as a board, that we were doing the most we could to get people to save for retirement. So that is working. That is a very unusual feature to have in a public sector plan. So we're very proud of that. I think it's interesting to note that over half of our employees will be in this new plan by 2019. That just shows our turnover rates and our retirement rates. And by 2034, 85% will be in that plan. Yes?
Betsy, I don't understand the first bullet. You got 2,667 participants, including terminated employees?
Right. That means that if somebody were to terminate, they may decide to leave their money in that plan in case they come back.
Because of the contribution.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we do have people who tend to come in and out of university employment, so it's not unusual to see that.
Okay.
In the first few years, you won't see it as much because they're not vested, but once people get vested, we will definitely see that.
You have 96% on your, on the match. What percentage put in more than the 3%?
I don't know that. Do you know that, Kelly?
It's a very small percentage. We just
I would think.
We have about 1% who go lower it below the 3, and we have about 6% that increase it above the 3. So most people, which again, to Betsy's point, says that they're probably not paying attention.
They're just sticking with what we put them in.
But going, does the plan provision have a minimum that, some plans that I'm familiar with, if your contribution doesn't exceed a particular amount, you have to take it out when you leave?
We do not, we did set a minimum, now that you say that. I'm sorry, we did.
On
Yep.
the defined contribution side,
Right.
not on the defined benefit, but on the defined contribution, there's a federal de minimis definition, and if it falls below that, we do distribute the money.
Okay.
But as I recall, it's pretty low.
It is, I want to say 3,000, if I remember right.
We've talked about strongly encouraging people to not leave a little bit of money in there because it creates huge administrative burden
Right.
for us. Yeah.
Right.
What are most of them doing on the 40, or on the defined contribution? Are they putting their money in the kind of a recommended plan, you know, that
We
comes-
we default them into the plans that are based on age, the
Yeah.
target funds, and 90-something% of them stay there. They don't move into our other plans. So they stay in the investment option that they get defaulted into.
So when they come to work, when they on board, they have to opt out, which means they don't look at
Which
it.
means they don't move, most of them. That's right. The next slide shows you, kind of back to talking about the defined benefit plan. This is a chart you've also seen before. This shows you the history of the contributions in dollars. We've shown it to you before in percent, but this is actually showing it to you in dollars. And as you can see, we are hopefully reaching a peak that we will come back down from. But this does not address our unfunded liability, which we're going to be talking to you about again in April. And of course, these are all assumptions based on what's expected to happen in the market, and I'm sure none of us feel comfortable making those assumptions. Let's see, so on the last, I think I have my next to last slide. Yeah, this slide talks about how many of our employees are saving additional money for retirement. We're very concerned about this number. We don't look different than a lot of other employers, but we have tried and tried to get people to save more for retirement. And as you can see, when you have 19,000 folks and only about 7,000 of them are doing it, we are not where we want to be. We've put a lot of time and effort. Kelly's folks have done an amazing job trying to market and communicate this, but this is kind of where we are today, and we'll hope to move that in the future. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about is the task force. I'm not going to go through all these objectives. I just want to tell you, yes.
Will you go back to that slide?
Sure. Back, there you go.
Is it because they don't know about the availability and the options, or they just don't want to do it?
Probably both. We'd like to believe they know about it, but it's amazing how many times someone will say, I didn't know that was an option. Or some people are confused and feel uncomfortable and don't know how to make that decision. We started a couple years ago offering one-on-ones for free from these companies, and that's helped a little bit.
Or bring it up at staff council meetings, or?
We have tried all of that, and it's amazingly hard to get people to actually do it. Often they'll act interested, but it's hard to get people to actually take action.
On UMKC's campus, I know, even walking to class, I see, although I'm not sure how many faculty and staff members it hits, I see flyers up
Oh,
in
good.
different buildings advertising for the UM, I think it's
Good.
retirement plan, or talking about benefits. But it
Probably
kind of
both.
struck me. I was
Yeah.
like, that's a good idea. Usually it's student orgs, but you know, you
Good.
reach staff and faculty with those too, so.
Good, I'm glad you noticed them. That's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, on the next slide, this task force started in June, just after we had your special meeting in May. I'm chairing this committee of incredible faculty and staff from all the campuses. We also have a hospital representative and an external member. We tried to represent not only the geographical differences, but also our age and length of service. So we have pretty much every generation represented on that task force. They've met 7 times, and they've got a few meetings left, and they are definitely on target to bring you recommendations in April. They're going to be sharing some of that with President Wolf in February.
Nancy,
Yes.
do you have any or how much overlap with the previous committee that you worked with?
Yes, we have at least 3. I see your hand saying 4. I thought.
Overlap with the previous committee.
Yeah, I think we have at least 3, maybe 4 people that were on that previous task force that just addressed retirement.
How many are on this committee?
There's 12. And they've actually, we gave them that report. That was one of the first things that they looked at, so they've seen that report. I think there's actually 4 or maybe even 5 that were on that other committee. I'm starting to think of more of them. So we'll make sure we point that out when we bring you the information in April.
Yeah, I think that continuity would be good. Is.
Yeah, we've had a really good discussion about it. What they're doing is they're basically going to figure out how to deal with these escalating benefit costs, but also trying to balance competitiveness with our peers and value to faculty and staff. So they have they've had a very tough charge, but they have really jumped in with both feet and are excited about bringing you their recommendations. The last slide is just to remind you that in April we will be doing the task force report. It's also the time that we normally talk about the retirement plan valuation. And then I am open for any other topics that you would like for us to bring.
So are we expected to vote on this in April? Are we going to digest it and talk about it?
It'll be an information-only item at this point. Is that
When would you want some action on it?
your understanding, Tim? That it would be an information item?
That's not saying what the recommendations are.
But you don't want action in April then, do you? You want action?
I don't think we're going to get to action in April. I don't think we will be.
We got time to look at it, digest it, talk about it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And most of the items are long-term recommendations that are not things we need to jump on right away. So we're really trying to curb the increase over a long period of time.
So do you have confidence that we'll meet the employer mandate by 2015 if we don't take any actions on medical?
Yes, very confident,
In April?
very confident. Anything else? Thank you.
I think the committee would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second.
We'll
whatever
take
you
that as a
like.
second. All right. Call the roll, please.
Curator Bradley,
Yes?
Curator Good,
Aye.
Curator Henriksen,
Yes.
Curator Phillips.
Yes.
Curator Ponder.
Yes.
All votes in favor.
Well, the next item on the agenda is me. David Bradley, I promise I'm not going to go on for more than an hour.
Oh, good.
I
good.
promise.
All right, we're looking forward to it.
First of all, I'd just like to say to each of you, thank you for letting me serve as your chair for this year. I'm very honored, and I appreciate that. And hopefully I've learned something on the 5 years I've been on the board, including from our former chairs, two of which are still on the board, David Bradley and Wayne Good. They've both been very good tutors in very different respects. But thank you. And
Don't ask about that.
Some good, some bad.
another thing, just to start off, I am certain that I'm going to make some mistakes. And some will be so obvious that even I will know that I've made the mistake. But for those that aren't that obvious, I'm counting on you to please let me know when I've made a mistake, and don't be bashful, and I know you won't be, knowing this board. The last 5 years have been very interesting, challenging, and illuminating to me. We've devoted a great deal of time and a record number of board meetings to finding a president who shares our Missouri values and who has the energy, talent, and knowledge to lead our institution through the many challenges we now face and will continue to face over the future years. In my humble opinion, we found the right person in Tim Wolf. President Wolf is already making a huge difference in many areas, including in the very important area of driving our limited resources to the areas that we collectively believe are most important. Through the strategic planning process that he's initiated, we are becoming more efficient and more focused on what we do best. While there's certainly still much more to do in this area, the process is off to a great start under President Wolf's leadership, and with the hard work and cooperation of each of our chancellors, the deans, and provosts on the campuses. I very much look forward to working with President Wolf over the rest of this year. We also, in the last 5 years, have conducted 2 searches for new chancellors, the second of which we just completed. I know we are all grateful to President Wolf, to Curator Covington, and others who spent a great deal of time searching for the best and most qualified person we could find to fill the enormous shoes of Chancellor Brady Deaton. I think we found him. Welcome to Columbia, Bowen Lofton, sitting in the back of the room. We look forward to working with you beginning tomorrow, which is your first official day on the clock. I know you've been putting in a lot of time without pay, but tomorrow we're actually going to start paying you. And as your first order of business, I assume you've got this Kentucky basketball game under control. We're going to win that, right? Okay. The other chancellor search during the last 5 years was to fill another big set of shoes, those of Jack Carney on our Rolla campus. I'm proud to say that the result of that search, Chancellor Cheryl Schrader, has surpassed all expectations. Under Chancellor Schrader's leadership, the Rolla campus has built upon the achievements of Chancellor Carney, and she's already made her own imprint in a big way, including the development of S&T's strategic plan and her focus on the important STEM initiatives that we're focused on. While we've not replaced the chancellors in the St. Louis and Kansas City campuses, and by the way, have no plans to do so, I would be remiss if I did not point out that we are equally proud of the efforts that you both are doing in your campuses. Tom George and Chancellor Morton, Leo Morton. It's not easy running a campus in an urban environment. We understand that. They have unique challenges that our other campuses don't have, but these chancellors have done an excellent job of building campuses that truly excel in multiple areas and in integrating these campuses into the urban fabric of our 2 great cities. Another issue that we have devoted more than a small amount of time to in the 5 years I've been on the board is that fairly unnoticed move by our Columbia campus to another athletic conference. By any measure, the move to the SEC has been a smashing success. Mizzou has established itself as a leader not only on the field, but also in the classroom, winning championships in football in the Eastern Division, in volleyball, while ranking second in the SEC in academic progress rates. MU has seen record-setting giving by donors since our move to the SEC, and will expect to see increased revenues from the conference, from bowl revenue, and network contracts in coming years, all as a result of our move to the SEC. In the future, while increases in revenues will certainly result in expanding and modernizing our athletic facilities, we are pleased to know that there will be additional resources available flowing from the athletic department to our academic programs on our campus. And again, all as a result of moving to the SEC conference. The positive exposure that MU has received on a national level has been incredible and will only continue to increase with the launch of the SEC network this fall. Finally, an overriding issue that we and virtually all other public institutions of higher learning have had to address throughout the last 5 years is how to do more with relatively flat state appropriations. The Great Recession hit just near the beginning of my term as a curator. It was a financial crisis that affected state government and public institutions dependent on state financing more than any other in our lifetimes. But the University of Missouri did not panic. Through the dedicated leadership of President Gary Forsey and later President Wolf and our chancellors, we tightened our belts and looked for ways to cut costs and become more efficient. Unlike many public and private universities, we have resisted the temptation to raise tuition more than absolutely necessary. We understand that, particularly in difficult economic times, it's vitally important to keep a college education affordable to all who have the desire and ability to obtain one. We've done our best to do so. In fact, our average tuition increase during the last 5 years is only 2.3%, which is among the lowest of any of our peers in the country. As you know, the board voted to freeze tuition for the coming year, another sign of our continued commitment to access and affordability. Which brings me to what I've chosen as my theme for the year as chair. It's customary for the board chair to pick a theme, and I've chosen, as you know, alternative sources of revenue. We don't know when the next Great Recession or financial crisis may hit our state or nation. Hopefully we'll not have another one like this one in our lifetimes. But whether we do or not, we will continue to have significant needs that will not be satisfied by state funding or tuition alone. We need to develop a new business model that works under any reasonably predictable future scenario. As I've mentioned several times today, we have to cut costs. We already have cut costs and become more efficient during each of the last 5 years. Much remains to be done, but under President Wolf's leadership, we now have a process in place that will continue to focus on eliminating unnecessary costs and generating new efficiencies. President Wolf knows that he will have the full support of this board in this ongoing, vitally important effort. Now I believe it's time to shine some light on the revenue side of the equation. We will continue to advocate for increases in state funding, and frankly are cautiously optimistic that the improving state economy will allow the elected leaders in Jefferson City to appropriate much-needed additional funding for higher education this year. But I think we all recognize that given the competing need for state funding and our status as a low-tax state, additional state appropriations realistically can only be part of the answer. And with declining demographics, which may reduce the rate of enrollment growth below the rate we've experienced over the last 5 years, and our fundamental commitment to keeping a college education affordable, increased tuition revenue also can only be part of the answer. We must develop and expand alternative sources of revenue. One of those was the focus of our board retreat this week, our development efforts. Our 4 campuses collectively have over 500,000 alumni. Our goal should be to encourage our campuses to obtain contributions from each single one of those 500,000 alums and encourage them to give back to the campuses commensurate with the financial benefit they have received from obtaining a degree from that fine institution. Many alums, as we all know, are doing this, and some are doing far more than their fair share, but I'm sad to say that far too many are not. Perhaps because they are still under the mistaken assumption that the state is still paying the vast majority of the cost, like it was when those in my generation graduated from school. We need to communicate our message loud and clear to our alums and ask them to support our campuses as they never have before. I truly believe our future depends on this. While we've made progress on corporate philanthropy, much more can be done in this area as well. Virtually every business of any size in the state benefits from the educated workforce our campuses provide. Many also benefit through the research conducted by our campuses. They all should support our great university regardless of whether the owners graduated from one of our campuses. As we discussed yesterday, there is much more we can do to encourage greater philanthropy by our graduates and our business community, and under our campus leadership and President Wolf's leadership, I am confident that we will follow through on these items. And I think you saw yesterday that our board, each member of our board, is very committed to doing what we can do to assist in this effort. These efforts that we all collectively will make, I think, can make a huge difference. Just one small example. Of the almost 33,000 MU alumni donors, which is only 16% of the alumni base, I might add, which is something that can be improved as well, the average gift of an MU alumni donor is $688. Well, that may sound like a good chunk of money, but compared to our peers, such as Illinois, in which the average alumni donor gives $1,135 a year, in Kansas, I hate to keep using Kansas as an example, but the average alumni donor gives $1,106 a year. It's almost about a $450 difference per alumni donor annually. If we could raise our average alumni donation to just these levels, just to match Illinois and Kansas, without any increase in the percentage of alumni that actually give, we would have an additional $14 million to the MU campus for the important strategic priorities that we've identified. That alone would make a huge difference. And if we can implement all the other things that we talked about yesterday, that amount can only be magnified. Another alternative source of revenue that has great potential is e-learning. We're very impressed to hear at our last board meeting the progress we are making in utilizing technology to better educate our students and to provide the opportunity for a college education to many who might not be able to attend our campuses. It appears that we are doing relatively well in this area in relation to our peers. But my sense is that we've only scratched the surface in this area. We hope to devote some board time later this year to focusing on building a business model for e-learning that makes sense for each of our campuses. And each of our campuses in this area, like in a lot of areas, are very different, and we understand that. We want to be able to provide a vehicle for providing every Missouri citizen who wants a degree and has the ability to obtain one to do so, even if that citizen, for practical or other reasons, can't travel to one of our campuses. This opportunity obviously would not be limited to Missouri citizens, but to anyone, anywhere, who would find value in having a degree from one of our campuses. Another alternative source of revenue I'd like our board to focus on this year is revenue that can be gained through the valuable intellectual property and inventions created by our campuses. I know Executive Vice President Foley is already looking into this and has a great deal of experience and knowledge about this issue. Finally, another alternative source of revenue that's currently being examined by Executive Vice President Foley is revenue from federal grants, which, as we all know, has become more difficult, but certainly we have confidence in Executive Vice President Foley that you're going to lead us to the promised land in that area as well. So we look forward to hearing from Vice President Foley in future board meetings this year about his progress in that area and what we can do to help. I'm truly excited about this upcoming year, and I really look forward to working with each of you. And again, thank you for the honor of letting me serve as your chair. Now, President Wolfel.
You had 10 minutes. You only had 10 minutes. That's pretty good.
System-wide. System-wide.
Thank you, Chairman Downing, for the very kind words. When you think about this board meeting, Board of Curators meeting and how much we've gotten accomplished in 4 days. Just think about how much we could get accomplished if we did it for 7 days. So Don and I will start working on the agenda for next meeting.
We just lost one of our board members.
Good afternoon to everybody. It has been a great board meeting so far and an exciting start for 2014. And this is a really momentous year for us. It's the 175th anniversary of MU, and being in Columbia is a bit poetic today, as well as it's also the 100th anniversary of the MU extension. Both these milestones will make the coming year one of celebration, and we're excited to embark upon it. I do want to acknowledge the board's new leadership with Chairman Downing and Vice Chair Copps. I look forward to working with both of you throughout this year, as well as the rest of the curators. Also, obviously, Don mentioned our newest addition to the team, Dr. Bowen Lofton. Dr. Lofton, as you know, starts tomorrow, but he has already started work on the opportunities. But we are very, very blessed and fortunate to have a leader of Dr. Lofton's stature come and lead MU to the promised land and beyond. So I would just ask everybody to give a round of applause and an official welcome to Dr. Lofton. Thank you. And also, Bowen's been kind enough to teach me how to tie a bow tie, because I tried on New Year's Eve night. It took me about 30 minutes. I gave up, so he says he's going to give me a lesson. So that will be one of many things that I'm sure I will learn from you, Bowen, in the years to come. The past days have been a bit difficult, a difficult time for reflection. All of us at the University of Missouri system continue to keep in our prayers and our thoughts the family, the friends, teammates of Sasha Menyukuri. Sasha's story really is heartbreaking and sad, and we're determined to learn from her experience, improve the way we serve people on our campuses who have been victims of sexual assault or who have mental health issues. In that way, we can honor her memory. I want to thank the board for voting to hire independent counsel to help us really understand the matters pertaining to Sasha. I also want to thank the chancellors in advance for the work that you will do in having a comprehensive review of all your respective campus policies, procedures regarding education and prevention of sexual assault and mental health services availability. I'm ensuring that the UM system resources, including increased funding as needed, will be directed to our 4 campuses to address these critical needs. We have a number of educational support programs targeted towards the prevention of sexual assault and understanding and treating mental illness. And when I look at the statistics comparing our performance over the last several years, as well as comparing our performance to peer institutions, I can tell you we're trending in the right direction. But remember, while it's important that we monitor statistics, we can't lose sight of the fact that this is about human beings. Even one sexual assault incident is too many. We can never be satisfied with where we are, because it will never be good enough until we eliminate all sexual assaults on our campuses and address all the mental health issues that unfortunately we have with our students and others on our campus. And this is about raising awareness about sexual assault and mental illness, and making sure our students are comfortable in reporting when they are victimized. It needs to be a continued priority for us. I'll do my part. I've already started. I'm using social media and other communication vehicles to get the word out that this is a priority for me, and it will be a priority for years to come. I'm going to be tweeting, which I've already done, links towards informational items like great articles or great research that has been done. And we're going to take this obviously seriously because it's something that is of epidemic proportions on our campuses. And unfortunately, without this education and investment, we're going to continue to have issues and problems. We begin this year, let me shift a little bit now from those unfortunate situations, but a priority. Now let me shift to talking about what the future holds from us from a Jeff City or legislative perspective. Don Downing talked about some encouraging signs that we're seeing down in Jeff City. Also, I think it's encouraging that we send a signal to our leadership in Jeff City, and freezing tuition was a great signal to send to our leadership down in Jeff City, because we do need to continue to make sure that we've got an affordable and accessible opportunity for any high school student that has the interest and passion but might not have the financial capability to come to one of our 4 campuses. So it's a great signal, and I appreciate it. You've heard that we've kept tuition low. We're number 1 in the United States in terms of average tuition increase for all our 4 years. We'll continue to keep that leadership position. We should be proud of that. We should be proud that we're number 1 in terms of the lowest tuition increase. And it's obviously being recognized, and that recognition comes in the form of applications for out-of-state students coming to our 4 campuses at our all-time highs. You're going to see our enrollment go up at the same time, and that's just recognition that as students, especially those that live in other states, look at what is available from a quality of education and the cost associated with that quality education, they choose to come to one of our 4 campuses. That being said, we have to continue to focus on the quality of our education. We're encouraged that both through the governor's leadership and recommendation by the General Assembly, that we will see an increase in funding for higher education. 10 days ago in the state address that the governor gave, he recommended 5% increase year over year in core appropriations, because we're one of the select few of higher education that made 5 out of our 5 performance measures, and that select few is less than a third of all institutions. We will be getting about 5.2% additional funding. Also, the increase in the Missouri's Bright Flight Scholarship Program and $20 million in grants to higher education, so that we can produce more graduates to meet the mental health needs in our state, are all another signs of encouraging support towards the importance of higher education. And I believe that the General Assembly and conversations are going to work very, very hard to support the recommendations that the governor has made. Of course, keeping education affordable while providing the resources necessary for the university to remain a high-quality academic institution can be a difficult balancing act, and we've made some difficult decisions in the last couple days to help get the necessary resources. But the one that I do need to highlight a bit, because it's out there and it's in the category of a ticking time bomb, it's a bad need that we need if we want to continue to deliver on our mission, is that of facilities. If you look at specifically what our needs are in the STEM area, again, that's science, technology, engineering, math, it's without an increase or some help on the capital side or the building side, we're going to be really struggling to meet the needs of the state. As I travel the state, I hear from business leaders all the time, I need more computer scientists, I need more information technology specialists, I need more engineers, and this highly technical skill is necessary for them to meet their business goals, and we're just not producing as many graduates as we need to in the STEM specific area. If you take a look nationwide, STEM jobs are growing 2 times the rate of non-STEM jobs. STEM jobs project to grow by 17% versus 10% for non-STEM jobs. According to a study by the U.S. Department of Commerce, other statistics is Missouri Math and Science Coalition estimates that our state will need to fill more than 100,000 new STEM jobs by 2018. The coalition also states that on average, recent STEM graduates earn 18% more than their counterparts in the non-STEM fields. In the life science industry alone, currently 2,100 firms employ more than 183,000 Missourians. There's no question that current advances in technology have come in large part by the creation and discovery of new knowledge, and the creation and discovery of new knowledge requires a workforce that is prepared and skilled in science and math at all levels. At the state's premier land-grant university, we need to be leading the way in preparing these STEM workers for the future. But to put it bluntly, we'll not be able to address these critical workforce needs in our state until we can solve our critical needs in STEM-related facilities on our 4 campuses. And our needs for additional lab space, renovation of existing laboratories, and new equipment are desperate and growing, and while we continue to delay maintenance and repair needs, the need still is out there, and we need to address it. Let me just give you some examples. We talked a little bit this morning about Laffrey Hall. As you know, it is a building that has significant requirements. As Gary and Tom talked about, it's $32 million of renovations that are required on a building that the pieces that were built in the 30s and 40s, and that's just one of 30 facilities on the MU campus that have extensive renovation needs. And that's not it. We talked about STEM, STEM building at MU. Let's go down to S&T and look at their major need, which is a $28.5 million renovation need at Schrenk Hall. And that's the biological science renovation, or chemistry and biological science building down there. And that would, again, the improvement of that building would help with the deficiencies that now exist for teaching, research labs, classroom, and support space that, again, is badly needed in chemistry and the biological science departments at S&T. If you go over to UMKC, again, another challenge, a significant renovation at the School of Medicine building and construction of the new health science education building come with a price tag of approximately $54 million. These facility improvements would address the university's need for more classrooms, meeting space, teaching laboratories, patient simulation labs, and a bigger, more comprehensive health sciences library, all of which are crucial to UMKC's professional healthcare training programs. And last but not least is UMSL. Everybody, if you don't know about Benton Stadler, where you been? Because we've been talking about it since I've been here, and Tom's had this opportunity and challenge for quite some time. I compliment Tom and his leadership team for addressing, basically self-funding the improvements, the partial improvements that they could make. Just for those of you that haven't visited Benton Stadler, it houses biology, chemistry, physics, psychology, biochemistry departments. The two buildings were built in '64 and '67 respectively. It cost $62 million to complete the renovation for Benton Stadler. And there's other examples that I haven't highlighted, but you can see based on some of these pictures. And when I first came to the University of Missouri system in my 2 months of work without pay, Bowen, you only had a few days, but in my 2 months of work without pay, it's who could one-up the other campus in showing me the worst possible facility they could. And I can tell you right now that Tom George won that contest clearly. When I walked into the room and saw black mold over one wall, I said, okay, you win, let me out of here. But anyway, it's unfortunately in a position, as you can see with some of these pictures, that requires some relief. So we are being asked to produce more STEM graduates. Again, back to the governor's recommendation in the state, a 3% increase in core appropriations specifically earmarked for STEM initiatives. We desperately need that, and we're going to put that to good use in terms of expanding classroom sizes and investments necessary to produce more STEM graduates. But the physical infrastructure, the education plant, if you could use that analogy, that we need to produce those students is in disrepair, and we've got to fix it. And we are going to do as much as we possibly can to do as many courses as we can online, but we have yet, nor has anybody else yet, figured out how to do that applied learning, that lab experience in an online basis. And I don't think that's going to happen in the near term. So this is an area that if you don't fix this bottleneck, you will be limited in terms of how you produce your students. And we're adding sections, we're going at night, we're going on weekends, we're doing everything that we possibly can. But our biggest bottleneck right now in producing STEM graduates and maintaining the mission that we've got for the University of Missouri system is buildings. That's it. It's buildings. And though very, very excited about our potential in our conversation yesterday about development, because that is something that we have, and my opinion shared with Chairman Downing, we have tremendous upside in our ability to work with our alumni, work with our potential donors, work with our business partners, and try to get the resources necessary to give us some relief on the buildings. And we're going to work hard, not just with the donors, but also in working with the state legislators and any other area that we can find financing for these. One of the things that we talked, Steve Knorr talked a little bit about, but I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, is this 50-50 match program. We have this legislation and statute, and this is the first year that we can actually exercise this opportunity to get some funding from the state. And it's a unique opportunity because it forces you to bring businesses, higher education, and state together on a common project. That's the prerequisite to get the matching, is you have to come up with the donations. And what's great about it is the businesses and the donors that we've talked to have stepped forward, and they've stepped forward very, very aggressively. We have $40 million in hand right now, $40 million in hand that's looking for a match down in Jeff City. What's interesting about the donors that have stepped forward, it's the who's who in the state of Missouri. It's Anheuser-Busch, it's J.E. Dunn, Express Scripts, Kauffman Foundation, Ameren, Enterprise, Burns & McDonnell. These are just a few. Behind those are also big names in the state of Missouri. What does this mean to the state of Missouri? 4,000 jobs. Let me make a comparison on this. 40 million match, 4,000 jobs. Let me make a comparison on this. Recently, the state came together. Both sides of the aisle, Governor, they all came together to support the bid for the Boeing 777X, right? It was the X. And the opportunity there was for 8,000 jobs. The state put up $1.7 billion in tax credit over 2 decades. That was added to by the St. Louis County. It ended up being $3.5 billion. $3.5 billion the state legislature and the governor agreed was a good thing for the state of Missouri. $3.5 billion to potentially get 8,000 jobs. What we're asking for is $40 million for 4,000 guaranteed jobs. $40 million as compared to $3.5 billion. Guaranteed, not possible, guaranteed 4,000 jobs. And that's how many jobs will be created if, in fact, we can get the funding for this. Lastly, the funding for these projects will help our development efforts exponentially. Why? When we have gotten withholds from the governors for the last, withholds released from the governor for the last 2 years, instead of just putting those into general revenue, for 2 years in a row, the leadership, and I thank the 4 chancellors for their, for stepping up to this. The leadership on all 4 campuses said, let's take that money, allow us to go out and get a match and go 100% towards need-based scholarship. We've done it 2 years in a row, and each time it's taken 30, 60, 90 days. It doesn't take long for these chancellors and their great development team to go out to the business community, go out to the donors that says, I've got this match. If you come to the table with this match, this is how many scholarships it would lead to, and it was a need base. And so that's worked. Now we're trying the same approach in terms of development for capital projects. If we get these funding, if we get these things funded for all the 4 campuses, there's hope there. There's hope there that the business community recognizes that we have to invest in higher education. They're bridging the gap. They now understand that the funding that we used to get to the state, from the state has declined. They now have to step up. Why are they stepping up? Well, they like us for one thing, because many of them are passionate alumni from it. But most importantly is there's a high dependency on our success in their business model. We produce their employees of the future. We do research with them collaboratively. It's a great opportunity to have that conversation. We're part of the community, and we better the community through this investment. So the business leaders are stepping up to the table. They, too, are going to work with us in convincing everybody and anybody that they can talk to down in Jeff City and throughout the state to get this thing funded. If we can get this thing funded, when we think about our development opportunities next year, and we can have the conversation with our donors about this potential. We had the language and statute, the state funded it. Now we believe that there's hopes to continue to do this, and maybe that is the model on a go-forward basis, which is a business, higher ed, state triumvirate that can raise the necessary dollars to meet these capital needs that I've just described. So we're encouraged about this. What I'd ask of everybody here is to support this in conversations that you have with political leaders, business leaders, or whatever. If you see some of those business leaders, friends from any of those companies, thank them for stepping up. And we're looking forward to getting the funding for this as well. So the start of the new year is, of course, a time for new resolutions and renewed commitment. Let this be ours at our beloved university. I thank you for your time, and once again, thank you for the opportunity to lead this great institution. Back to you, Chairman Downing. Thanks.
Next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion for approval of our consent agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Cindy, please call the roll.
Curator Bradley?
Yes?
Curator Covington?
Yes.
Curator Cups?
Yes.
Curator Downing?
Yes.
Curator Good? Curator Henriksen?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Ponder?
Yes.
All votes in favor.
Our final item on our public session agenda is good and welfare of the board. Does anyone have anything for the good and welfare of the board? I have one item. I would like to thank Interim Chancellor Steve Owens and Interim General Counsel Phil Hoskins for their wonderful service as interims again. You're becoming professional interims. I don't know what that means. But thank you so much, and on behalf of the board, could we have a round of applause? And the final order of business is, do I have a motion to adjourn the public session?
Yes. Don't move.
Second.
Please call the roll, Sydney.
Curator Bradley?
Yes.
Curator Covington?
Yes.
Curator Cups?
Yes.
Curator Downing?
Yes.
Curator Good? Curator Henriksen?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Ponder? Yes. Okay.
We will now move to executive session down the hall.
We're done in this room.
We're done in this room.
Yes.